I never thought 7 words could destroy a marriage, but here I am, staring at divorce papers on my kitchen table. "You're working late again?" I asked when David walked through the door at 9:30, his work boots leaving muddy prints on the hardwood we'd saved 2 years to refinish. "Job ran over. You know how it is." He didn't even look at me as he headed for the fridge. "Actually, I don't know how it is. I heated dinner up twice waiting for you." David grabbed a beer and finally turned around. "Sarah, I'm tired. Can we not do this tonight?" "Do what? Have a conversation with my husband?" "Have a fight. That's all we do anymore." He twisted off the bottle cap with more force than necessary. "Maybe because you're never here to have normal conversations. I'm working my ass off to pay for this house, your car payments, everything you wanted." "I never asked you to work yourself to death, David." "No, you just complain when I don't make enough money. Remember last month? Why can't we go on vacation like Emma and Mark? Why can't we remodel the bathroom?" My chest tightened. "That's not fair. Isn't it? Nothing I do is ever enough for you, Sarah. I work overtime, you're mad, I'm not home, I take time off, you're stressed about money, I can't win. You're being dramatic." "Am I? When's the last time you said thank you for anything I do? When's the last time you seemed happy with me at all?" The words hung between us like a challenge. I felt cornered, defensive, angry at how right he sounded. "Maybe because I settled for you after Marcus rejected me. You were never my first choice, David. You were just there." The beer bottle slipped from David's hand, shattering against the tile floor. The sound echoed through our suddenly silent kitchen. His face went completely blank. Not angry, not hurt, just empty, like I'd reached inside him and turned off a switch. I watched my husband of 7 years stare at me like I was a stranger who'd just slapped him across the face. "David, I didn't mean—" But he was already walking away, glass crunching under his boots, leaving me standing alone with my poison words hanging in the air and the horrible, crushing realization that I couldn't take them back. The world had stopped, and it was entirely my fault. I tried to take it back immediately, but David just walked away. He slept in the guest room that night, and I lay awake replaying those terrible words over and over. "David, please, can we talk?" I whispered outside the guest room door at midnight. Silence. I didn't mean what I said. I was just angry. Still nothing. The next morning he was gone before I woke up. When he came home from work, I was waiting in the kitchen with his favorite lasagna. "I made dinner," I said, forcing a smile. "Thanks." He served himself a small portion and sat at the far end of the table. "David, about last night—" "It's fine, Sarah." "No, it's not fine. I said something horrible, and I need to explain." "You don't need to explain anything." His voice was flat, emotionless. "You were honest." "I wasn't. I was cruel and stupid and—" "Sarah." He looked up at me finally, and his eyes were like looking at a stranger. "Just leave it alone." The next few days followed the same pattern. I'd try to apologize, and he'd nod politely and walk away. It was like living with a ghost of my husband. "You look terrible," my sister Emma said when she called Thursday night. "Thanks for the pep talk." "Seriously, what's wrong? You sound like you've been crying." I almost told her, almost confessed what I'd done, how I'd destroyed my marriage with 7 words, but how could I admit that I'd told the man who loved me that he was my consolation prize? David and I had a fight. We're just working through some things. "Want me to come over? I could bring wine and we could trash talk men." "No, that's okay. We'll figure it out." But we weren't figuring anything out. David had stopped trying to figure anything out. Friday evening, his best friend Jake stopped by to borrow tools. "Hey, Sarah," Jake said, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. "David around?" "In the garage." Jake nodded and hurried past me. They spoke in low voices for 20 minutes, and when Jake left, he barely said goodbye. David had told him. I knew it from the way Jake looked at me, or rather, couldn't look at me. That night, David didn't come home at all. At 2 a.m., I drove around looking for his truck and found it parked outside the 24-hour diner downtown. He was just sitting there in the driver's seat, staring at nothing. I wanted to knock on his window, to beg him to come home. Instead, I sat in my car across the parking lot and watched my husband choose to sleep in his truck rather than share a house with me. I'd broken something that couldn't be fixed, and we both knew it. I decided to fight for my marriage, but I didn't know how. I tried cooking his favorite meals, leaving love notes, even suggesting couples therapy. David would just thank me politely and continue with his day like I was a roommate he barely tolerated. I made reservations at Romano's for tonight, I announced when he came home Tuesday. 7 o'clock, like our first date. That's thoughtful, but I'm not really hungry. David, please, we need to talk about this. Talk about what, Sarah? The way he said my name, like it tasted bitter, made my stomach drop. About us. About what I said. About fixing this. Some things can't be fixed. He headed upstairs without looking back. I bought him a new watch, expensive, the kind he'd admired in stores but never bought himself. Left it on his pillow with a note. Time for a fresh start? I love you. S. Infidelity. Or his old watch to work the next day. Sarah, honey, is everything okay? David's mother, Linda, called Thursday afternoon. David seemed different when he stopped by yesterday, distracted. My heart jumped. He came to see you? Just for a few minutes. He looked tired. Are you two working too hard? Maybe a little. We're fine, though. Good. You know how much we love you, dear. David's never been happier than he is with you. I hung up and cried for 20 minutes. David hadn't told his family. That had to mean something, right? You're acting weird, my coworker Rachel said during lunch. Jumpy and sad. What's going on? David and I are having some communication issues. Communication issues? Rachel leaned forward. Honey, is he cheating? No. God, no. David would never. Then what? Money problems? In-laws? It's complicated. Sarah, you look like you haven't slept in days. Maybe he's having a midlife crisis or something. Men do that. The idea terrified me. What if David was seeing someone else? What if my words had pushed him away completely? That evening, I followed him when he left after dinner, watched him drive to Riverside Park and sit on a bench for 2 hours, alone, just staring at the water. I sat in my car and realized my husband wasn't having an affair. He was trying to figure out how to live with the knowledge that his wife had settled for him. I'd done this to him. I'd made him question 7 years of love. 3 weeks after my confession, I came home to find David sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread in front of him. Divorce papers. My legs gave out, and I sank into the chair across from him. We need to talk, he said, and his voice was so calm it scared me more than if he'd been screaming. David, please don't do this. I've been thinking about what you said, about Marcus, about settling. I lied. I was angry and stupid and... No, you were honest. Maybe for the first time in our marriage. The papers between us looked official, final, real. I talked to Dr. Henderson, David continued. Therapy, trying to understand why this hurt so much. You're in therapy? Individual therapy. I needed to figure out if I was overreacting. And? I'm not. He met my eyes for the first time in weeks. Sarah, I gave you everything. Restructured my entire life around making you happy. I thought we were partners. We are partners. Are we? Because partners don't keep secrets about their exes. Partners don't marry someone while still in love with someone else. I'm not in love with Marcus. Maybe not now. But you were when you married me, weren't you? I opened my mouth to lie, then saw the exhaustion in his eyes. Yes. At first. But David, I fell in love with you. Really, deeply in love. When? I don't know exactly when, but that's the problem. You don't know because it happened gradually while you were settling for me. I knew the moment I fell in love with you. October 15th, our third date, when you laughed at that terrible joke I made about pizza toppings. My heart broke hearing the date he remembered so clearly. Marcus contacted me 2 years ago, I whispered. David's face went white. What? On Facebook. Just a casual message asking how I was. I didn't respond. I didn't even want to. But you didn't tell me. There was nothing to tell. There was everything to tell. David stood up abruptly. Sarah, I've been competing with a ghost our entire marriage. Every time you seemed distant, every time you were unhappy, I wondered if you were thinking about him. I wasn't. How would I know? You've been lying to me for 7 years. I reached for his hand, but he pulled away. I've already filed the papers, he said quietly. Mr. Peterson is handling everything. David, please, one more chance. Counseling together. Let me prove... Prove what? That you love me now? Sarah, I can't spend the rest of my life wondering if I'm enough for you. I won't. I begged David to give us one more chance, to try counseling together, to let me prove that he wasn't second choice anymore. But he just looked at me with those tired eyes and said, Sarah, I can't compete with a ghost anymore. I won't. You're not competing with anyone. Aren't I? Every argument we've had, every time you've been dissatisfied with our life, was that about us? Or about what you thought you should have had with him? I couldn't answer because I wasn't sure myself anymore. I hired a lawyer, I told him the next day. Jennifer Walsh. That's your right. She says you're being unreasonable, that marriages go through rough patches. David looked up from his coffee. Did you tell her what you said to me? I told her we had an argument. Tell her the truth, Sarah. Tell her you married me while in love with another man. See what she says then. Jennifer Walsh was direct when I finally confessed the whole story. Mrs. Peterson, I'll be honest. Your husband has grounds for emotional cruelty. The fact that he's not pursuing that route shows considerable restraint. But people say things in anger all the time. Do they reveal 7-year deceptions in anger? Because that's what this sounds like. David's brother Mike came to collect some of David's things that weekend. Mike, please, talk to him. This is all a misunderstanding. Mike stopped packing books and looked at me. Sarah, I've known David my whole life. I've never seen him like this. Like what? Broken. You broke my brother. I didn't mean to. Maybe not, but you did. I wrote David a 10-page letter, detailing every moment I fell in love with him, every reason Marcus paled in comparison, every way David had been the best husband I could have asked for. He read it sitting at our kitchen table while I watched from the doorway. It's a beautiful letter, he said when he finished. Then you understand? You see how much I love you? I see how much you're capable of loving, which makes what you said even more inexplicable. David. Sarah, this letter proves you know how to be honest and vulnerable. So why weren't you honest with me for 7 years? Why did it take you destroying our marriage to finally tell me the truth? My parents came for dinner Sunday, expecting a normal family meal, and finding David's half-packed boxes instead. What's all this? Mom asked. David and I are getting divorced. Divorced? Dad looked shocked. But you two are perfect together. We were never perfect, Mr. Johnson, David said quietly. I just didn't know it. Even my parents, who loved me unconditionally, listened to David's explanation with growing understanding. Oh, sweetheart, Mom whispered to me later. What were you thinking? I wasn't thinking. That was the problem. Chapter 6. The Unraveling. As the divorce proceedings moved forward, I started losing pieces of my life I didn't even realize were tied to David. Our mutual friends didn't know how to handle the split, and most of them seemed to drift toward David's side, not out of malice, but because his reason for leaving made sense to everyone. We're having a barbecue Saturday, Jake's wife Melissa said when she called. You're both welcome, of course. Will David be there? He already said yes. Then I shouldn't come. It'll be awkward for everyone. Sarah, we don't want to choose sides. But they already had, hadn't they? When someone's marriage ends because they admitted to settling foe, or their spouse, there's really only one side to choose. I found David's old love notes hidden in my cookbook, little scraps of paper tucked between pages. Loved watching you cook today. You make everything better. D, and thank you for laughing at my jokes even when they're terrible. Each note felt like evidence of a crime I'd committed. Your productivity has been declining, my boss Patricia said during our monthly review. Is everything okay at home? I'm going through a divorce. I'm sorry to hear that. Do you need some time off? I needed time to go back and undo the worst mistake of my life, but that wasn't an option. At the grocery store, I ran into Tom, one of David's coworkers, with his wife. Hey, Sarah, Tom said awkwardly. How are you holding up? I'm fine. How's David? Tom exchanged a glance with his wife. He seems to be doing better since he moved out, more like his old self, you know? The words hit me like a slap. David was better without me. Happier. I'd been dragging him down without even realizing it. That's good, I managed. I'm glad he's okay. I found out David had blocked me on social media when I tried to see if he'd posted anything. His phone number had been changed too. All communication now went through lawyers. The finality of it destroyed me more than the divorce papers had. You need to tell me what really happened, Emma demanded when she came over and found me crying over a box of wedding photos. So I told her. Everything. Marcus, the settling, the horrible confession. Emma was quiet for a long time. Sarah, that's really awful. You think I'm a terrible person. I think you made a terrible mistake, but I also think David's right to leave. Even my own sister understood David's position. I've been his defender my whole life, Emma continued. When boys broke your heart, when jobs didn't work out, when life was unfair to you. But this time, you were unfair to someone else. I was completely alone with the consequences of my own cruelty. 6 weeks after David moved out, I hit my lowest point. I was scrolling through old photos of us on my phone at 2 a.m., crying over pictures of our last anniversary, when I realized I was looking for signs that David was unhappy. I was trying to convince myself that our marriage was failing anyway, that my confession just sped up the inevitable, but in every photo, David was looking at me like I was his world. I drafted a text to Marcus. Hey, it's Sarah. I know it's been years, but I need to tell you something about David and me. My finger hovered over send. I could hurt David the way he'd hurt me by leaving. I could prove to him that I really didn't care about Marcus by showing him how pathetic Marcus actually was. Then I saw myself clearly for the first time in weeks. I was sitting in my empty house at 2 a.m., plotting to hurt the man I claimed to love because I couldn't handle the consequences of my own actions. I deleted the text. The next day, I finally cleaned out our shared closet. David had taken most of his clothes, but left behind a small wooden box on the top shelf. Inside were ticket stubs from our first date, the hospital bracelet from when he'd stayed with me during my appendectomy 3 years ago, and a crumpled receipt from Chez Laurent, the restaurant where he'd originally planned to propose but got too nervous and waited 3 more weeks. I collapsed right there on the closet floor, surrounded by evidence of 7 years of genuine love. David hadn't just loved me. He'd cherished me. He'd kept mementos of our relationship like they were treasures. And I'd too. Thrown it all away for no reason except momentary cruelty. Sarah? Rachel found me there 2 hours later. I'd given her my spare key weeks ago and forgotten about it. I ruined everything, I sobbed. The best thing that ever happened to me, and I destroyed it. What did you destroy? So I told her too. The whole story. Oh, honey, Rachel sat down beside me in the pile of David's shirts. You weren't just cruel to David. You were cruel to yourself. What do you mean? You had something beautiful and real, and you sabotaged it. The question is why. I don't know why. Yes, you do. Deep down, you know. I thought about it as Rachel held me. Why had I said those words? What had possessed me to hurt David so deliberately? I felt worthless, I whispered finally. He loved me so much, and I felt like I didn't deserve it. Like eventually he'd figure out I wasn't worth loving. So you pushed him away first. I guess I did. For the first time since my confession, I understood that this wasn't just about David. This was about me never learning to love myself enough to accept love from someone else. The day our divorce was finalized, I didn't go to court. I couldn't bear to see David sign away 7 years of marriage while I sat there knowing it was entirely my fault. Instead, I sat in our empty house, my empty house now, and tried to figure out how to rebuild a life I had destroyed with my own hands. The papers arrived by mail 3 days later. Official, stamped, final. I was Sarah Mitchell again, not Sarah Peterson. 7 years of marriage reduced to legal documents. "The house is yours," David had insisted through the lawyers. "I can't afford it anyway, and I don't want to fight over it." But I couldn't afford it either on my marketing coordinator salary. The mortgage David had been covering was twice what I made. Within a month, I'd have to sell. I heard David's ting someone, Emma mentioned during one of our weekly check-ins. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. What? Melissa told me. Nothing serious, just dating. The knowledge hit me like a physical blow. David was moving forward while I was still drowning in guilt and regret. Good for him, I said, and meant it, mostly. I started therapy with Dr. Martinez the following week. "Tell me about your marriage," she said, during our first session. I destroyed it. How? So I told the story again, for what felt like the 100th time, but Dr. Martinez asked different questions. Had you ever told David about your feelings for Marcus before you got married? No. Why not? Because I knew he wouldn't have married me if he'd known. So you were protecting the relationship by lying? I was protecting myself. From what? From being alone. We sat in silence for a moment. Sarah, do you see a pattern in your behavior? I was starting to. I ran into Marcus at a coffee shop downtown 3 weeks later. The meeting that would have felt earth-shaking a year ago felt completely meaningless now. Sarah! Wow! You look great, he said, sliding into the booth across from me, uninvited. He was exactly as I remembered, charming, superficial, completely self-absorbed. He spent 20 minutes talking about his job, his new car, his ex-girlfriend's drama, never once asking how I was. So, how's married life treating you? He finally asked. I'm divorced. Oh, sorry to hear that. But hey, maybe it's for the best, right? Now you're free to find someone who really appreciates you. Someone who really appreciates you, like David had, like David did for 7 years while I took it for granted. I should go, I said, standing up. Wait, maybe we could grab dinner sometime? Catch up properly? No, Marcus. Thank you, but no. Walking away from him was the easiest thing I'd done in months. That night, I wrote David one final letter, not begging for reconciliation, but taking full responsibility and thanking him for loving me better than I'd oved myself. I didn't send it, but I kept it as a reminder of what I'd lost and who I wanted to become. 6 months after the divorce, I was finally starting to feel like myself again, or maybe like a better version of myself than I'd ever been. I still missed David every day, but I was learning the difference between missing him and missing being loved by him. You seem lighter, Dr. Martinez observed during our session. I feel lighter, like I'm not carrying around this secret shame anymore. The shame about Marcus? The shame about not thinking I deserved love. I'd moved into a small apartment across town, sold most of our furniture, started fresh. The space was mine. No ghosts, no memories of David's hurt face, no reminders of what I'd destroyed. David got promoted, Emma mentioned over lunch. Melissa said he's doing really well, dating that teacher more seriously now. I waited for the stab of jealousy, but it didn't come. Instead, I felt something like relief. I'm glad. He deserves to be happy. You really mean that. I really do. I'd started volunteering at the literacy center on weekends, helping adults learn to read. It gave me purpose outside of my own drama, helped me remember there were people with real problems that made my self-inflicted heartbreak seem small. You're different, said Maria, one of my students. Calmer. When you first started, you seemed angry. I was angry, at myself, mostly. And now? Now I'm working on forgiveness, starting with forgiving myself. At the grocery store, I ran into Linda, David's mother. She was polite but distant. How are you, Sarah? I'm doing well, thank you. How's David? He's happy, really happy. She paused. I hope you're finding happiness too. I'm working on it. She nodded and moved on. I'd lost not just David, but his entire family. People who'd treated me like their own daughter for 7 years. But for the first time, I wasn't drowning in regret. I was learning to live with the consequences of my choices while building something new. I may never find love like David's again, I told Dr. Martinez. How does that make you feel? Sad, but also okay? I'm learning that I can't base my worth on being loved by someone else. That's significant growth. I'm building a life that's mine, not dependent on being someone's wife or girlfriend. For the first time in my adult life, I was choosing myself first. It was terrifying and liberating at the same time. 1 year after my divorce was finalized, I saw David at our mutual friend's wedding. He looked happy, genuinely happy in a way I remembered from our early days together. He was there with someone new, a woman who looked at him the way I should have always looked at him, like he was her first choice, her only choice. Sarah! Melissa hugged me at the reception. I'm so glad you came. Thank you for inviting me. How are you? You look peaceful. I am peaceful. Finally. David was across the room with Amanda, the teacher Emma had mentioned. She was pretty in a natural way, laughing at something he'd whispered in her ear. When she looked at him, her face lit up with uncomplicated joy. That's Amanda, Jake said, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of wine. She's great, really good for him. I can see that. You okay with this? I'm happy for him, Jake. Really. And I meant it. Watching David dance with Amanda, seeing the lightness in his movements, the smile that reached his eyes, I felt grateful that he'd found someone who could love him without reservation. I'm sorry about how everything went down, Jake said quietly. We all liked you, you know. It was just... Jake? You don't need to apologize. David told you what I said, didn't he? He nodded. Then you know he had every right to leave. I'm just glad he found someone who appreciates what I was too stupid to value. During the bouquet toss, I stood in the back, watching Amanda catch the flowers with a laugh of surprise. David spun her around, and they kissed like they were the only 2 people in the world. I'd once had that. Someone who loved me completely, who chose me every day, who built his dreams around our shared life. I'd thrown it away in a moment of cruelty because I was too insecure to believe I deserved it. But I'd learned something in the year since. Some mistakes can't be undone, but they can become the foundation for growth. I would always love David. I would always regret my words, but I'd finally learned to love myself enough to never sabotage my own happiness again. As the evening wound down, I found myself on the dance floor alone, swaying to a slow song, content with my own company for the first time in my life. David passed by with Amanda, and we made eye contact. He nodded, not friendly, not unfriendly, just acknowledging. I smiled back, genuinely wishing him well. I'd learned that being someone's second choice was still better than being no one's choice at all. But more importantly, I'd learned that the most important choice was learning to choose yourself. The song ended, and I gathered my purse to leave. Tomorrow I'd go back to my small apartment, my job, my volunteer work, my therapy sessions, my quiet, honest life that belonged entirely to me. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the life I'd earned. And for the first time since I'd spoken those 7 devastating words, that felt like enough.